Hey, I'm Ron Black. I'm happy to be here. I'm a plumber from Wyoming. Well, I am. Check this out. What do you think? You know, guy can plumb clothes like this, can he? No kidding. I was raised in the mechanical contracting business, and I always wanted to get out of that business because, it involves a lot of shovel work. You know that. I know that. And I eventually, got out of the service, GI Bill, college, marketing degree. Thought, yeah, this is great. I'm going to get out of plumbing. And while I was waiting for my wife to finish up her education degree, we had 2 kids, so I thought, I need to do something because the GI Bill is, So I picked up the tools and started plumbing for a few of my friends in the National Guard. I was putting in remodels in their basements and whatnot, just tinkering around. And about 7 weeks had gone by, and I had 2 hired hands, and 7 months had gone by, and I had 12 hired hands, and by the next year we had 45 people on the shop, and geez, I'm back in the plumbing business again. So here I am. It was like hard to get in, easy to get out, or easy to get in, hard to get out. Well, fortunately, the last great recession that you all remember, some of you remember, certainly I remember it, in the mid-'80s, woohoo, that helped me change careers. So I shifted careers. And I found along the years that no matter where I went, that the skills that have served me the most beneficial in every industry I've worked in high tech, in low tech, and no tech, it has been those fundamental skills of project management. The stuff I learned in my construction engineering classes, how to schedule, getting down to the basics of who does what, when, and what's it going to take. And there are some simple tools that we can use to improve this whole deal. But why you're here today probably is not just for a basic, if you will, scheduling class, but maybe more of a strategic outlook, because we got some senior people in this audience. I mean, look around. There's some old people out here. No, sorry, senior. There's some senior people in this audience. And you've seen most scheduling stuff before. Now, how many people here have somewhere along the line learned how to do a schedule, create a schedule, okay? I mean, a good share of the people have here. So what I want to show you is why that schedule is important so that you can make sure that your teams are using that schedule effectively. Is that okay? That make sense? See, I met a guy back in, 1988 or so. He was about twice my age. His name was Walter Strand. Walter stood about this tall. He had hair that made Einstein's look like he was having a bad hair day. One of the most brilliant men I've ever met. We were on an airplane. I was headed back to Boston to my job in Boston. And Walter and I struck up a conversation based on a break-even analysis chart that I had on my laptop. And, he just curmudgeon old guy just kept looking over my shoulder and looking at my laptop. It was kind of irritating for a while. And then he took his bony little finger and he pointed on my laptop and he said, "Do you see that?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Do you know what that company needs?" And I said, "I think so, sir." And he gave me a briefing of what that company needed based on the break-even analysis chart and the track record over a 3-month period that was on my computer. And it was at that moment when I realized that Walter Strand could look at a set of data, a chart, and he could, if you will, bury himself in the bowels of that business and understand who had their feet up in which department and who needed to get them on the ground and get them moving. Walter created a methodology that he had taught people for 35 years in his consulting practice. And before we landed in Chicago to change planes, Walter Strand and I declared ourselves in business with a company called Management Diagnostics. And we took his life work, and the next 3 years he taught me the consulting business, and he taught me financial ratio analysis and what he had developed for it. And what you're going to see today is the essence of what Walter taught me. It's every good idea I've ever been able to find, beg, borrow, buy, or steal, wrapped up into how to run, if you will, a business more profitably, more effectively, using the tenets, not only financial ratio analysis, but also of scheduling. Now, a lot of people would never put those things together, would they? Scheduling, financial ratio analysis. Let me see if I can do it. Let me see if I can add some value for your stay here. The granddaddy of all ratios, Walter Strand taught me, was ROI. Somebody shout it out. What's it stand for? Absolutely. Now, we do it with return on assets. We do it on net assets, yada, yada, yada. But it's return. It's how much are you getting back compared to how much you're putting into that venture. Do you agree? And Walter showed me, though I'd learned this in college, I never really put 2 and 2 together. He said, there's actually a formula. He says that ROI is equal to the mathematical formula. Simple math here. If you take the margin, that is the difference between what you're paying for it and what you're selling for it, what the market will allow you to bear and what your vendor will let you have left over, right? If you take your margin and you literally multiply it times the number that's known as your leverage, now that's how much money you're using and how much of your bank's money you're using. How much skin you got in the game compared to how much skin you're using from your bankers, from your suppliers, and from the people that you're going 90 days out on, right? So how much skin you got in the game. Leverage. Now, that's a risky number, isn't it? Higher the leverage, higher the financial risk. You see, you know that connection, right? And when things go south, you got no flexibility, so companies come tumbling down. In the construction industry, 2 key failure factors. Excessive tolerance of risk, excessive leverage. When those two meet, it's not a pretty sight. You have no doubt seen, experienced, been around that scenario in the last 3 years. Ain't been pretty, has it? Now, you take leverage and margin and you multiply them against the number known as turnover. Now, turnover is a number people frequently ignore. Turnover is how much sales you can create with the assets you have on hand. And so you got this pile of goodies. How many times can you use that pile of goodies to generate sales? You got one paving machine. How much business can you run through that machine? Obviously, if you run 3 shifts a day rather than 2 shifts a day, you're going to probably be more profitable, right? So the more you can use, the more utilization you get out of your assets, the more profitable you are. Make sense? Well, the thing that stunned me was Walter taught me that you multiply these 3 things together and it actually comes out to ROI. And that gave me a new way of looking at my businesses. It gave me a new way to consult to my clients. Because when I looked at Walter's success formula, I realized, oh my goodness, you know, results, that is the margins that we're trying to create. As managers, we're trying to increase the margin, right? The most dynamic number in our business. Move the top line a little, that's nice. Move the cost a little, that's nice. But if you can stretch that margin, that's a multiplier effect. So we're always working on margin, that results factor. And if you can then improve the quantity, how much work you're doing, how much material you're moving, if you can improve the quantity of work that you're doing in plain fashion, you know, construction site terms, and you multiply that against how quickly you can do it, how much you can do this week, this month, this quarter, this year, you can see a business in a whole new light. Here's a round, you know, rule of thumb number. If you can increase the speed of a project, a singular project with a given set of assets, a given set of leverage, a given set of resources, if you can improve the speed of a project by 25%, what would that do to your profitability? Shorten the speed. What would it do to your success formula? Do you see the dynamic? It's not an increment, is it? It's a multiplier. Let me give you a visual image if you can. Let's say you're making $100 on a project. And you can do that 4 times a year. And now you cut those projects down in time by 25%. And now instead of doing 4 projects a year, you're doing 5 projects a year. Instead of making $400 a year, you're making $500 a year. What kind of percent increase was that? Now, for those of you who have been in Las Vegas too many nights in a row, it's a lot. It's a lot. You know, Walter taught me that the way to build a better business was incrementally. You save a few dollars here. You boost your sales up a little bit over here. You stretch your margin out a little bit over here. And you multiply them all together and you got, woohoo, baby. A little here, a little there. Fine-tuning things. Where people fail to fine-tune is in the speed. It's the easiest place I can go to help people make money. Let me ask you this. Who sets your cost of goods sold? When you buy stuff, who sets the price? Do you get to choose? The supplier chooses the price, right? You can choose supplier A, supplier B, supplier C, but essentially, you don't get to vote, do you? I mean, you can argue. You can negotiate. But at some point, everybody's paying the same general price. Now, let me ask you this. Who sets your selling price? Who said you? There's an optimist in the room. The market sets the selling price. Your stupidest competitor sets the selling price. Would you agree? The competitor that made the biggest mistake. I hate the way that works. Now, there's some new ways of doing business in our industry, right? Value added, design build, etc. Yay, wahoo, right? But if you're out there in an open bid market, obviously, whoever makes the biggest mistake gets the most work, at least temporarily. Right? So I like to see speed as the focus. You can look at your speed in an organization and you can jack up your profitability dramatically simply by tightening cycle times, by making project time tighter, shorter, brighter. Everything you do, speed. Think fast. Efficiency and effectiveness. So the way I say this, I say that success is equal to the value that you can create, the margin that you can deliver to your customers, your customer's customer. Multiply that times the amount of work that you can do, the volume, the value in the volume. And for crying out loud, every good speaker's got to have, like 3 things that rhyme, right? Or something like that. So I use velocity. The volume, value, and velocity. And if you don't get anything else out of today's work at Con Expo, please leave saying to yourself, I got to find out a way to increase the velocity of the way we do business. Now, all competitive advantages are temporary. If you figure out a way to do things faster, better, and cheaper, it won't be long and somebody else is going to have that same way, right? But what they cannot do is they cannot steal your team's wisdom. They can't steal your team's knowledge base. They can't steal your team's ability to be creative. They cannot steal the wisdom of your team. They can't steal that. They can't replicate that. Your team is your secret ingredient that nobody else can get their hands on. Because it's not what we're doing to increase speed, but how we're thinking about increasing speed that's important. So it's the how to think that's important more than the what to think about. That's a competitive advantage that will remain for years. How your team thinks. So I also in this say to myself, if we're going to increase the organization's profitability and effectiveness, what we can't do is do it by ourselves. Much as I'd like to say that all my ideas are good, I know better than that. Most of my good ideas, I've said it before, I'll say it again, are stolen. I'll take an idea from anybody I can find one from, right, and apply it. And I hope you'll do the same in your teams, in your organizations. Up the org chart, down the org chart, and beside the org chart. The loading dock clerk knows better about what's going on in that place than anybody else in the organization. Everybody is essential in your organization. Everybody has a good idea. Everybody can improve the volume, velocity, and value of work. I drove that into my plumbing team's head. And what we resulted from was 13 little white pickup trucks that all pretty much looked alike. They all pretty much had the same set of tools in them, the same set of drills, the same set of saws, the same number of bits, the same number of files to sharpen the bits, the same way we sharpen bits, the same fitting boxes, the same count of fittings in the copper fitting boxes in each slot. We systemized. We harvested the wisdom. We took the best practices. We said, who does it best, fastest, most efficient? We stole those ideas and we spread them around the organization. We harvested the wisdom of our team. We paid above scale, and we had higher effectiveness than anyone in our industry, in our market. The industry average, Robert Morrison Associates, was 7.5% over the 14 years we ran our shop. In our worst year, we were at 14%, double industry average. Why? Not because I'm a good plumber, not because I'm a good financial ratio analysis, but because my team found places to increase value, volume, and velocity. I encourage you to harvest the wisdom of your team. We can't do it alone. Now that being said, I see project management a little bit different light than some of my colleagues do. When people look at project management and they look at a Gantt chart, I see, hopefully, wisdom at work. Not a mess. So I want to show you what I think are the keys in the project management area. Operational control. Now let me back a little bit of this up with some data for you. So you got something to hang your hat on in case you got to make a case besides what Ron told me. I know that doesn't carry much water, okay? Here's the drill. What do you think? What can you control? Can you control your people? Well, there's a limit, but yeah, pretty much, right? I mean, that's what we do. How about this? Can you control your material? You have to, right? Can you control your equipment, your vendors, the work you're actually producing, the money that's required to do all that stuff? Is there anything else you need to control in order to be a successful organization in the construction industry? Well, you can't control the market, can you? That's out of our control. One time more loud, please. Time. Thank you. You got to have time. Now, of all these things, you only have so much control on people, so much control on materials, so much control on equipment, so much control on resources, vendors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, our margin of controllability is such and thus. Look at time as something that by definition can and must be controlled. When you shift your thinking to time is a piece of what you do, perhaps the most important resource that must be used, then you've made the transition from thinking about just value and just volume. You've made the transition to integrating velocity thinking into your thought process. How you're thinking now hopefully will change a little bit. Time is the big one. Time is the one for me that all other things pivot around. It's all about time. Now, there's always some cost trade-offs, time and costliness, right? We'll talk about that, and I'll show you how to analyze that. But on the big picture view, it is time. I have never found a body of knowledge that is a better body of knowledge than a project management body of knowledge when it comes to figuring out who does what, with what results, when. If I can ever find something that works better than project management methodology, I'll jump on it. But thus far, it is the tool of choice if you want to produce results with resources, and time is important to you. Like it or not, it's the tool of choice. Now, these success-failure factors came from a study of about 5,000 organizations, a lot of projects. And they're across the board. They are not just construction projects. Construction projects in and of themselves constituted about 40% of the projects you'll see demonstrated here. There were IT projects, there were manufacturing projects, there were research and development projects. There's even some space shuttle projects in this amassed data that you're going to see. And you look at all those items as a project, right? As a project, goal, objective, strategies, people, things. And the success and failure factors, the causation factors, look like this. To succeed, you must have them. If you don't have them, you're going to fail. These are the causation factors. First and foremost was communication. The ability to communicate is, as we know, not only difficult, but essential. And it's a big chunk, isn't it? Who said what? I thought you said, no, I didn't say that. Here's what I said. This is what I meant. But I thought you meant, no, that's not what I meant at all. I've confused even myself with that. Communication is so key. Now, a control system was missing in a large share of the organizations that failed in projects. A control system. Now, the definition of a control system ran from critical path, network diagrams, program evaluation, review techniques, yada, 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 all the way to sticky notes on a wall. That is a control system. A to-do list is a control system. Right? So it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be effective. Any control system at all that we could communicate around. See, you got to have a control system to communicate around. Does that make sense? Next key item was project exposure. Now, by the definition of project exposure, let me just give you a scenario. Let's say that you're in a large organization that manufactures equipment. You got a couple of new initiatives coming out. One, everybody's really juiced up about. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Yeah, oh, I like that project. And one of them is, oh, yeah, it's interesting. We got to do that. Which one's more likely to be successful? The one people care about. The one that's got the emotional juice behind it. If your project is one with high exposure in your organization, it's more likely you're going to get the resources you need, right? It's more likely you're going to get heard when you have a problem, that people will rally around it. It's more likely you'll get what you need when you need it. If you've got the orphan project, wow. In this case, orphans make widows. I see all the time projects will give those little projects to the new person. As a rule, as a project guy who steps in and turns around projects, I don't take little projects on. If the people don't care about them, I can't afford my reputation to be around them. I only step in where projects are so important that, right, we're all in the same boat together. We either make it happen or we go down swimming. So if you're a rookie, if you're the new person on the team, make sure that any project you're given is one that has significant exposure. The big projects are easier to run, to my rookie friends, than the little projects are. Those little projects, like Wyoming rattlesnakes, they're harder to see. They got sharp teeth. The big ones you can see and hear. They're smart enough to get away from you, but it's them little rattlesnakes that'll get you. Those little projects will ruin your reputation equally as well as a large project. Do you agree? Watch out for the little ones. Project exposure is important, and it's a good thing, not a bad thing. Now, look at the success criteria consensus. You know, is this what we really want this project to do or be when it grows up? Just getting the team to agree on it. Now, in construction, very often it's a whole hassle between what the client wanted and what we give them. You know, there's always that, okay? So there's always that. In other projects, not construction projects, it's always like, is that really what we were trying to do? Or is that just the way we went? So consensus is always an issue. And then we get down to budgetary pressure. Now, this is kind of a weird deal. This one's backwards. If you have all the money in the world on a project compared to a project that has a tight budget, which do you think is more likely to succeed? Now, perhaps counterintuitively, the one with a tight budget is more likely to succeed. Why? I'll tell you why. I learned this lesson the hard way. Anybody ever been to Rock Springs, Wyoming? Anybody from Rock Springs before I talk disparagingly about that fine city in the prairie? We built the recreation center there. Did the mechanical contracting on the citywide recreation center there. And I was in Rock Springs, Wyoming. This is in the days before cell phones. On the phone to my bidder, 225 miles down the road, my estimator Jerry. And I run out of the bid opening. We are the apparent low bidder. And I run out of the bid opening. I get on the local dial-up phone, and I called Jerry. I said, Jerry! With great glee in my voice. The biggest project we'd been able to land to date. Right at the top of our bonding capacity. Man, we were standing on top of a stool and stretching. Talk about risk aversion. Nah, not us, right? And Jerry says, Ron? Right then and there, I knew we had a problem. Jeez. We had a bonding rate of 2.75, okay? This wasn't a great big contract, but, when you're 34 years old, it sure seemed like a big contract. It was a $1.5 million contract. And I said, what's up, Jerry? He said, I didn't add in the bid bond. So right out of the gate, we knew we were, a chunk of change in the hole. Huge error of omission. And you know what we did? Yes, we panicked. And we decided, we either take this job and make it work, or we don't take this job and ruin our reputation. And so we thought, either way, it's pretty dangerous. And we decided that we would, being the fools that we would plunge in and charge ahead and yahoo, right? And away we went. So we looked at the project again. We recast everything. We rebid it. We created a new critical path schedule. We went to the first pre-bid meeting, and we took this in to the general contractor, and he liked our analysis, our diagram, really well, and it saved him from having to create one. So he put our chart up on his wall, and the first 6 months of the project was run on our schedule. Now, you know who had the clear work path, the most efficient and effective method. You know who had the high profit margins up front in the project as much as possible, right? I mean, that schedule was biased for the plumbers on site, okay? It wasn't biased for anybody else. It was our schedule. And we ran our schedule. I took our best people, put them on that project. I showed up every week. It was 225 miles an hour away. I showed up every week anyway, right? You could not go. Had to be there. I got the best people I could possibly get, and every time they had a project meeting at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, I was in that job site trailer. My superintendent was in that job site trailer. My chief fitter was in that job site trailer. And the biggest guy we had on the team, didn't matter, he didn't have to be smart, he just had to be big. He was in that trailer. We dominated every meeting. Every meeting. We literally tried to dominate. We found our $35,000, found 35 on the other side of the equation, and ended up completing the project with more than we thought we were going to make. Why? Because we dialed up everything that we had to work with. We raised the bar of our own performance. Panic can be your friend. But I don't like those experiences. How about you? I've had enough of them for one career. Jeez, you only got so much adrenaline in one lifetime. I've used a lot of mine already. Well, budgetary pressure is not a bad thing. Control is not a bad thing. A tight schedule is not a bad thing. It will drive a little panic into the right people at the right time. Use it. Now this one, over-optimism, actually shows up as a defect. It shows up as an actual problem in projects. Okay, who besides me has ever entered a project with a slight amount of over-optimism? Ah, yes, we have several people that have had the courage to raise their hands here today. Several who are sitting next to their boss and therefore will not raise their hand under any circumstance. Over-optimism. And this last item, it turns out, internal buildup. Now, internal buildup is, can you get the resources you need? The brain power and the skill sets. Can you get the fitters? Can you get the operators? Can you get the people who know how to buy, who know how to run a crew? Can you get trade skill? Now, I won't go on to my rant, what have we done to ourselves in this industry, but we have, I preach to the choir here, a considerable shortage of talent in the trades. Is that still true? We're in the middle of a recession. Is it still true? What kind of oxymoron is this? And who do we have to blame except ourselves? What are we doing to grow our people? Oh, that's another rant. Okay. But it turns out that internal buildup is a huge issue. Can you get the people you need to run the projects? And you know what? With our built-in optimism, with our built-in risk aversion, with our built-in focus on growth in the construction industry, we can get ourselves in serious people problems in a hurry. So it only shows up 6%. But I reckon, for many of us, that 6% has a ripple effect that's really nasty. And it ties directly to the project. It does indeed. So, that's the wisdom. Now, look at this thing. If you fuzz out the bottom two pieces, over-optimism, which is an attitude, and internal build-up, which is probably our own darn fault. Everything else on that chart, essentially, boils down to two factors. Communication, control. Who does what, when, what's it going to take, what's it going to cost, and or how much profit is in it, right? Who does what, when, money. Therefore, my approach focuses on fixing things when you can, while you still have a fighting chance to get it right. And in the big picture, I see this whole project management body of knowledge really in three categories. There's the stuff you do before you decide to go after that project. Wow, that's important stuff. It doesn't always get the attention it deserves, all the initiation stuff. And then the stuff you do after you're pretty sure you got it and you start planning on how to do it, before you start, doing site work and writing permits and mobilizing and, writing POs, all the stuff before. And then it's that madhouse, that helix to heaven or hell. You know, make it happen with what you got to work with right now. Now, I'm not one who walks around a project site with a schedule under my arm and points at the Gantt chart and says, you were supposed to be here 3 days ago. I am one, however, who advocates in this planning section of work to harvest the wisdom of your colleagues, build that strategic approach to the project, and then get an overview of what it's going to look like and kind of a sense and tone of where your problems are going to be, and find out where your pinch points are. Right? And then do what you can strategically to remove the pinch points. And then when you kick off this project, then I'm back into that 3-week planning cycle. Right? I mean, I'm looking down the road 3 weeks, making sure we got the material, resources, etc. for the next 3 weeks. And that's an ongoing thing. It just roll over. And you probably got your own method and your own pace and your own metronome that works for your industry and for your trade. So the short range becomes more important as we've entered the project itself. But before we get to the project is usually we're too dang busy to do a good job of it. And that's where all the good can fall, right there. That's the time, before. I mean, everything afterwards is Band-Aids. You can think strategically and intelligently before. After that, you have to think with a strategically biased panic scenario. In this, if you put it into application, what do we got? If we're going to find the places where we can manage the decisions that must be managed, that's what's important. Now, my control points are not your control points. My control points are my view of my world, but I want to give you this paradigm so that you can think about what your control points are. You know, we might have some parallels, but I'm not here to tell you to do it my way. That's ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. I'm just teaching you how I think, not what to think, if I may hedge it with that. So I like seeing a job selection checklist. Should we go after that job? Why or why not? You know, core competencies. Do we have the equipment? Do we have the talent? Will it fit in? Is it within our bonding capacity? How many of this size of job can we handle at once? You know, our sweet spot back in the day, you know, we had a sweet spot of maybe $350,000 to $750,000, and the more technical it was, the better. So our sweet spot was really water treatment package plants across the Rockies. I mean, that was our sweet spot. We knew how to read the instructions. You know, we could put stuff together. We had enough talent. We could do that. And that was just our sweet spot. We needed to stay there. When we took on the Rock Springs Recreation Center, I wish somebody would have kicked my head in before I went after that project. It was stupid in retrospect. It really was. You know, say what you will about it, but it was just downright stupid on my part. So a job selection checklist. Now, I know what the deal is. We've got to keep the guys busy, right? Turns out that is the single most popular question of failed firms used in the previous 12 months. We got to keep the guys busy. Most frequently heard problems. I've got that data in this afternoon's class. I'll share it to you, or just give me a call. I'll send it to you if you want it. But it turns out that's a very common mistake. Now, plans and specs, taking a peek at them. You know what? Engineers and architects are as pressed as the rest of us are. They can't spend as much time as they need to or want to when they're drawing these days. They can't do it. So a lot of that's going to fall right back in your lap if you're the end user, right? I mean, God bless them. They're nice people. They're working as hard as they can, but there's only so much in the market the way we're doing things these days as well. And then, of course, we got the pre-bid checklist. On mine, there's a category that says bond. There's several other stupid things I've forgotten over the years. and the older I get, the more I know a short checklist is better than a long memory, right? And you know what you got when you got a checklist? You got a way of teaching somebody else to do your job. If you got a good checklist, you got a good way of communicating to see what's done or not done. And then, of course, we got this estimating system, some systematic approach. And, you know, while a coin toss is a system, I don't really recommend it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Some sort of parametric system, you know, with electrons involved or not, is a little better than a coin toss. And yet, I've seen it, and you've seen it. I saw a guy, I was in his office, they were getting stuff ready for a bid the next day. And the boss gets called into the estimator's office. He said, I got to get this out. They're asking for it. And so the boss stands up, and he says, come on, Ron. And we walk into the estimating room, and they've got the mechanical plans out here, right? And he says, I got this page and this page. I'm not going to be ready. And the boss went down and looked at the page. He said, 1.2. Flips the page. 500K. Oh, no, 700K. Flips the page. I'm going, you know, it's right then and there I decided I needed my fee in advance. Pre-planning checklist, certainly. Now, what do I need to be planning on? When you're bidding this thing, and then when it actually comes to the time when you're going to plan it, usually some time's gone by, a lot of water on the bridge, and if you're like me, I can't even remember what I did yesterday. But, you know, there may be some key issues that you pick up when you're estimating it. Oh, yeah, we better watch out for that because that could be a gotcha, you know? Owner-supplied equipment, for example, is always something I'm always paranoid about, okay? You know? And so you find these gotchas. You want to put that on your pre-planning check. If you get that job, you know, make sure that somebody catches it. Now, a pre-planning checklist can be as simple as a don't miss this, put it on a sticky note, put it in a file folder, you know, so it's there. Just catch the wisdom of the moment and carry it forward, right? Now, in the planning phase of work or in projects, the job setup, of course, is part of things. And you've got a systematic approach. I encourage you to use a systematic approach in the way you set up your jobs. You know, all that stuff, I finally threw it out, but, you know, I could tell you who did what when, you know, 15, 20 years ago with my job setup, because it all went into a box. It was all, you know, integrated into the system. You know, you can find things when you need them if you got a setup approach. Now, the WBS is one of those terms we throw around in project management like it's a big deal. Well, you know, it is a big deal. I'm going to show you why. But the work breakdown structure is a way of thinking about the work. It's not what it looks like. It's not how you do it. It's the way you think that counts. And so many of our new project managers, they see WBS and they say, oh, yeah, this is good. That's part of the PMI's methodology. And I'm going, give me a spoon. I need to gag myself. A work breakdown structure drills into the work, and you find things you didn't know were there. And you keep drilling until you find more things you didn't know were there. And then you drill a little more, and you're down at that point in time where you go, ain't nothing left to be found. At that point in time, you've done an adequate job of using a work breakdown structure, a thought process, a drilling into the project to recognize where the hidden killers are. That's a work breakdown structure. Task chart. You know what a task chart is? It's a to-do list for teams. It's a to-do list for teams. That's all it is. Who does what? On my task charts, the simplest project plan I have is always a to-do list. And the simplest project plan I use is a to-do list with a task and a person's name next to it. Because on my task charts, every line item has a responsible party. It's not a company name. It's not a contract number. It's not an organization. It's not a department. It is one singular individual with a number, an email, and a personal address where I can hunt that guy down if I got to. There's no hiding behind a team on my work breakdown structure, on my task charts, right? Single point responsibility. If you chase a team down the hallway, it's like chasing a ghost. You need somebody you can get your hands on if you need to get personal on a work job, right? The CPM schedule, of course, critical path methodology is one of many methodologies of scheduling work. It's the most frequently used and the most well-known, and it's got the greatest body of knowledge behind it. And the only problem I have with people who use a lot of CPM is sometimes they go a little too deep. You know, you got to dumb it down for me if you're going to get me to focus on the really important things. And I'll show you what I think a good critical path methodology thought process is. And I use critical path methodology when I cook spaghetti. I do. I use critical path methodology when I plan my travels. I do. Right? It's a way of thinking, not just a way of communicating. And I want to show you what's important about it. And then a resource chart, of course. Who's doing what when? A lot of times these end up in Excel. A lot of times they end up on the wall. A cash flow chart is very simply created. That's how much it's going to cost you and how much you're going to be billing out by period. All of a sudden, you've got a margin chart on your hands from financial purposes. Now, over on the action end of things, we've got a working schedule, typically a 3-week, maybe a short-run schedule, progress reports, those types of things, variance charts, how we doing now, change order docs, most assuredly, project journals. Oh, my goodness. You know, please document it. please document it. You may find yourself in a courtroom in Commerce City, Colorado, 3.6 years after the fact, explaining to the judge why you think the guy owes you $500,000, okay? And if so, you may need to pull into your job journal and reach into that job journal and drag out the coffee-stained napkin with which you wrote his numbers on. And offer as evidence that what you say he said is what he said. A job journal, right? And remember, job journals are public, and they are evidentiary. So be professional when you create your journal, right? And truthful, and know that sooner or later your project journal too will see the light of day. Like an email you didn't mean to send, it'll see the light of day. So here's the key elements I want you to focus on. A pre-bid checklist, I think you can probably get more bang out of than you are right now. A work breakdown structure, you can probably do a better job of and find some leverage than you're doing right now. A task chart, very simple methodology. And a change order docs, of course, always a place to stumble. And project journals, these are the key areas I see generally that it's easy to bring up the standard, improve performance, and it doesn't take a lot of money or time. Okay? Now, for those of you who are busy taking notes, be advised that all your notes have been taken for you and prepared, and they're on the web sitting out there, and nobody downloaded this, did they? Did anybody? Yo, yes, 2 out of the entire audience. All right, so it's about an 18-page doc. All this stuff is in there. It's still downloadable. If you can't find it, send me an email. I'll send it to you, okay? So don't break your arm taking notes. All right, now let's move on down this project lifecycle thing. And in project management, they teach us these 5 phases. Well, in our business, yeah, fine. We fit in here like everybody else. Here's the thing I add to the party. Your opportunity to impact success deteriorates rapidly from the moment you get the bright idea, you're going to do that job. It goes downhill fast. Your choices, your options diminish rapidly. As the time burns, sooner or later, you got no options left. I mean, have you ever been at the 95% point of a project asking yourself, how are we going to get this sucker done? Have you ever been there? I know you have. See, 95% done projects are vampire projects. Vampire. They suck the life out of your team. You wish you could kill them, but you can't. If you've ever had a vampire project experience, there's only one way of killing a vampire project. And there's only one time to do it. It's very, very early. In that initiation phase, the key things that I like to see people doing: choosing the right projects, understanding the constraints of that project, understanding the stakeholders of that project. These are whoppers. You know it, I know it. I just want to dial your attention back to them. You've learned these lessons. I'm just trying to help you recall them, okay? Minimizing assumptions. That's what we do in that early stage. All right. Now, having done that, then we start planning with a clear conscience and an open heart. And the work breakdown structure turns out the single most important document in project management because it's the drill down doc. And from work breakdown structure come tasks, from tasks come resources come durations. And at that point in time, you can put together a workflow understanding. It is a learning process. And unless you take the time to create a schedule, you have refused to learn about your project. Refuse to learn is not a good thing to do in this market. Find the milestones. You can't manage everything, but if you can find a milestone, it's like a handle on success. And I manage milestones like a junkyard dog manages a bone. I spot milestones. I rally people around milestones. I say, I don't care how you get there, just achieve that milestone, right? I'm not the expert. You're the expert. How you're going to do it's your deal. I'm just making sure you're hitting my milestones on time. And, of course, budgets. Piece of this, a normal schedule is what I think a safe, simple plan ought to look like. Safe, simple plan, not too much risk. A little flexibility in it. These days, the owners want to own your slack. I think it's ludicrous. They want to take every risk reduction ability you have in a schedule, and they want to steal it away from you before you even get the project started. They want to own the slack. They want everything to be critical. And when it's all critical, then it's all on your shoulders. It's unconscionable in my point of view. You need flexibility in your schedule because projects do not ever go the way you think they do they? Ever. You walk into this thing with a baseline plan. That's the thing you're going to communicate around. That's the thing you're going to expose to the public. And I encourage you, and I'll go public on this, I want you to have 3 plans. Not 1, but 3. I want you to have 1 for the people you're working for. I want you to have 1 for the people you're working with. And I want you to have 1 for you. And never the 3 shall mix. What you communicate to the owners, what you communicate to your team and vendors, and in your heart of hearts, what you got to make happen. I'm not saying plan large all the time. I'm saying keep it simple. Keep it simple. A lot of risk, plan more. Haven't done before, plan more. Work with people you don't know, plan more. You do it in your sleep, you do it all the time. It's your people, same old project, you can afford to plan just a little bit. Planning is not a revenue source. Planning is a survival mechanism, a risk reduction mechanism, and an improvement of velocity mechanism. Checklist, I'm going to pop past this. I don't want to walk through it, and I know I can send it to you. You got your own, it's just an example. And why use CPM? Why use it? Can anybody make a lucid case of why CPM should be used, or why you like it, or why you use it? To manage your time. Why not? You go out on a limb here for us, will you? Yeah. Because the owner demands it? You know, a lot of times that's why we do CPM. It's required in the specs. Well, let me give you a reason that I hope will burn into your brain. Of all the projects that are failed in that study of 5,000, of the failed projects, all the failed projects in common, they did not have the ability to track the task progress at the task level. They had no leading indicators when things were going south. They had no red flags that made them jump up and shout and scream and pitch the tizzy they needed to pitch when they needed to pitch it. You know, if you got to pitch a tizzy, you might as well pitch it while there's still a chance it'll do you some good. You pitch it at the 95% vampire point, it's not going to do you any good. You got to pitch a tizzy, pitch it at the 5% point. Go ugly early. If you got to go ugly. And the single most frequently cited reason for cost and time overruns are, as you might guess, errors of not performance, rather of not thinking about it. Holes in our thinking. We left something out. Errors of omission have made my hair white. That's why I demand CPM methodology in my clients. Now, work breakdown structure is the single most important piece of work. We're going to do a little activity here because, well, I think it'll be fun. And I want to make a couple points. A work breakdown structure, we are just drilling into the project and we're trying to break things down into the big chunks of work, the categories of work. Oftentimes in construction, you know, from a general contractor's point of view, we got the big category spec items, you know. We got the plumbers and we got the fitters and we got the HVAC people and we got the site people and we got the brickies and we got the roofers and we got the flooring people, we got the interior and we got the TIs. You know, by trade we break projects down. That's fine. You can break a project down any way you want to break it down. But the idea is just to keep drilling into buckets and into each bucket and subcategories and subcategories and subcategories until you get down there to bedrock. And you realize there's nothing left that's going to bite me. I got a pretty good view of this thing. And then you get out of the detail and come up as high as you can so you can manage it. So getting down in the weeds is necessary to find the snakes. But you can't manage from the weed level. You got to get up to the treetop level where you can see the horizon, where you can get a view about, right? You got to get up to the milestone level to manage. But you have to be at the weed level to protect people and make sure you're managing the right things. So drill down your work breakdown structure, then come back up to the level that you're going to schedule at. So always do a work breakdown structure way deeper than you really want to, and then come back up and manage your project at a very much higher level, and you can do it intelligently. And then if you run into situations like we did with the Baltimore City electrical water treatment conversion from mid-voltage stuff, $12 million project, we ran into stuff underground. They didn't know it was there, right? But we got out of that 180 line item schedule, and we ran into problems, and we said, okay, we got a problem here. And then we drilled into it and made a 300 line item schedule for that little piece, So we're managing at 180 line items, $12 million worth of work. And from time to time, we need to drill into a piece of work and have another 200 or 300 little project plan, right? Which is another group of people. And we don't need to bury somebody else with all this stuff. Just stay out of the weeds, okay? So make it scalable. Stay out of the weeds. So a work breakdown structure we're going to do today. You got a scratch piece of paper handy? Everybody got one? Okay. Now, does everybody have someone that is near them that looks intelligent? I always ask that question. I always get the strangest answers. I would think you'd immediately say, oh yeah, at least from the people who are sitting next to their supervisor. But no, they're always the ones that never say anything. Now, I want you to team up. 3-person teams. Crowd up, spin around, just get together. We are going to spend 3 minutes on this project, and I want you as a team to create a workable work breakdown structure as rapidly as you can. And when you've got an effective work breakdown structure, I want you to give me the high sign. Any way you want to give it to me. And then we're going to come and check out your work breakdown structure and see if you win the prize. The prize is one of these for everybody on the team. This is a $300 set of DVDs. It's my 4-hour time management and project management light coursework, okay? So everybody on the team is going to win one of these, but you got to work fast. And by fast, I mean 30 seconds. Here's your project. I want a work breakdown structure so that we can eat spaghetti. Ready, set, go. Okay, I'm coming and I'm watching. Oh, let's go see what these guys have got over here. All right, now give it to me quietly. You don't want to expose your wisdom. What do you got?
Ingredients, boil the water, put that stuff, heat the sauce, drain, plate.
All right, very nice. Now choose a spokesman. I'm going to come back with a microphone in a couple seconds. All right. We have one. We have two coming up. We have three. We got some answers here.
Travel, shop, buy, travel back home, measure recipes, prepare, serve, eat.
I got you. All right, have that ready to go. We'll see here. All right, we got one back here. I'll be right back. I'm getting my exercise this morning. I'm running about here like a wild man. I really am, man. Watch me. I spill coffee really well. What do you got?
Each bit of store groceries, buying food, prep food, ingredients, pans.
All right. I've seen 3 of the same projects so far. Let's see if anybody else is getting creative. Let me get back here. All right, I'll be back here. But it's good. It's good. That's good. Seems like a lot of project managers think a lot alike. All right? All right. Let me hear what you got.
Buy spaghetti where, what brand, cost, availability, cook spaghetti where, when.
All right, nice. We got 5 projects that are very similar. All right, here's what I'm going to do. We're finding a lot of projects that are very similar. Let me start up here with one that was the first one that echoes everyone else's pretty much. All right, and then I'm going to come back and see if there's some other ways of doing this, okay? So let me come back up here just for a minute. All right, hold on your thoughts here, guys. Everybody gets a shot. Everybody gets a shot at fame and glory, whether they want it or not. This is what you call a shot at fame and glory.
Exactly.
You please let us know what your work breakdown structure looked like for Eat Spaghetti, right?
30-second version.
The 30-second version.
Yes, please, miss.
Okay, get ingredients, boil water, cook your pasta. What's that say? Sorry?
pasta.
Cook pasta, heat up your sauce, drain, plate, serve. Eat.
All right, how'd she
Done.
do? Can we get a little hand for her? Thank you. What's your name?
Yvonne.
Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you, gentlemen, for helping out Yvonne here. All right, now, did you hear their approach, this strategic approach? To boil water, buy ingredients, to make it, right? Now, everybody else I talked to had a similar approach, right? Go and shop, get ingredients, get pots and pans. Did anybody use a different strategic approach to eating spaghetti? What, you got a different strategic approach? I know there's more than one way to eat spaghetti. All right, let me go back here and get these guys, and I'm coming back here, all right? And I'll be over here. And yeah, you guys, you look too intelligent to miss. All right? Well, now we're talking like a general contractor over here, aren't we? Give it to somebody else to do, right? Okay, what do you got? Let it rip.
Put it on the plate, pick up your fork, bring it to your mouth, chew, swallow, repeat.
He's a subcontractor. Please, no, sorry. How do you do? Do good? Right, nice. Now, how to eat spaghetti, very literal, right? So we may have had some communication issues on my scoping the project out originally, right? So already we've seen even a simple project like this can get screwed up in the scoping, in the statement, in the early on project doc. And they always do. And if you can screw up eating spaghetti, man, you can definitely screw up a building or a parking lot or a highway or a bridge or a dam, can't you? You bet you can, all right? Now these are two very parallel, and yours was the end game. But we got a couple other projects over here I suspect have been done a different way. What, you guys doing this project a different way? Where was I supposed to be right here? These intelligent-looking gentleman and lady. What you're doing hanging out with these two nefarious-looking critters, I don't know. But would you do us the honor, miss?
Do I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go to a restaurant, order, eat, out of there.
I'm liking it. You liking it? Well done. Tip of the hat. All right, tip of the hat. Can anybody top that one? All right. Call the wife. All right. You're going to get yourself in trouble. This is being taped. No, sorry. All right. So, if you needed to eat spaghetti, we got a couple of ways of doing this, right? More than one way of doing it. And they are very different strategically. With your permission, shall I give them the gifts? You think that's the right place to go? With permission? All right. If you guys will see me afterwards, I'll get you all a copy of my Acrobatics for Overachievers DVD set. All right. Yeah. All right, very nicely done. So I typically get my teams together when I'm doing work breakdown structures. And I use whiteboards and sticky notes a lot. I like to get my key contractors, my key vendors, my key people into a room, lock them up, give them lots of caffeine and or sugar. And I have them brainstorm rapidly, just like this. I force them to think as fast as possible. And when you force people to think really fast, some weird stuff comes out, and some of it's going to be junk, and some of it will be creative bliss. Because it breaks the pattern. Well, we've always done it this way, we've always done it that way. And what we need to do early on is do a different way. You know, some of the best contractors I've ever worked around, once they get the project, they don't tear it up, but they throw it all over their shoulder, and they say, let's start from scratch. Let's plan this thing now to maximize our profitability, maximize our volume, velocity, and value. You know, let's not do it the way we've always done it just because we've always done it that way. Let's do this one. Let's raise the bar on this one. Let's put that panic into our brain set, and let's do this one a little differently. So let's get creative. And then I'll break things down in big chunks of work. I don't want to miss any big chunks of work. If I miss a big chunk of work, I miss lots of dollars. You know, if I miss the spaghetti sauce, that's a problem in spaghetti, okay? But if I miss the Parmesan, we're still going to get our carbs. You know, we're still going to be okay. You know, so you miss the little things, it's a little problem. But don't miss the big chunks of work, the big milestones. So that's the way I encourage people to use, if you will, work breakdown structures. Okay. Now, from the work breakdown structure, I always go to a task analysis chart. And that can be on a spreadsheet, it can be in a Microsoft project, it can be on the wall, it can be anywhere you want it to be. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it has to be. Because what it gives you is one single place where people can go and point at it. Are we on time? Is it done? Have you done this? I mean to do this. I want you done by this time. So it gives you the ability to engage, with the most amazing managerial effective device in the world. That, now. Okay? It's real simple, right? It gives you the ability to communicate effectively. So this thing can be literally a to-do list, if you will. It is a to-do list. And on most to-do lists, we've got a duration. How long do we think it's going to take? I used to publish this with all my crews because they were paid based on not piecework. I paid them wages. But in our estimating system, we also produced work orders that took our estimate and put it right on the work order. So it was one integrated system. So if somebody's going to go out and they had, let's say, some 3-inch Schedule 40 black iron pipe to hang in a sprinkler system in a wing of a building, okay? And maybe there's 280 feet of it with X number of hangers. All that material would come out on the sheet. All the time would come out on it. It would all add up on it. It would all show in one spreadsheet. They would be able to pull material from it. And they'd take that document with them to the project. And they'd use it as their time card. And then they would see if the total for the day was what they got installed. And if not, there would be a way for them to say, Ron, your estimate's all screwed up. We need to fix this. We were drilling hangers into reinforced concrete and it wasn't working, or we need better equipment. So you get the feedback you need to improve your system. So you've got that closed loop estimating system. You're making your team part of the wisdom you're using this way. Who knows better how to drill a hanger, than the guy doing it? Who knows better? So get that feedback whenever you can coming back to you. Now, resources, dependencies, and costs are the 5 key elements of any critical path methodology. But I'm not saying use critical path on all your projects. I'm saying use this on all your projects. Single point line item, checklist, absolutely. Always use it. Always. I don't care how small the project is. It's got to be at least on one sheet of paper to be a project. But on more sophisticated projects, you need more sophisticated methodologies. So if you've got a scratch piece of paper along, I'm going to walk you through a guy who worked for a very, very pugnacious rascal. This man's name was Henry, and Henry's boss was a rascal. Henry was demanding. He was always in a hurry. He always wanted the best work, lowest cost, highest price. He always wanted it all. You know Henry's boss? Who has Henry's boss, by the way? Never mind. Don't get yourself fired, but who has Henry's boss. Okay? So here's what Henry did. Henry got a project thrown to him one late Friday afternoon. He said, Henry, here's another project for you. It's another opportunity to excel. And Henry said, thank you so much, boss. I love you so much. He took the project from his boss, put it on his desk, and as his boss exited the building, he sent him the international distress signal. Then he got to work. Because 5 minutes later, Henry's boss came back and said, Henry, are you done yet? How long is it going to take to do this project? How much is it going to cost? And who do we need? He said, time out. I got to think about this a little bit. So he looked at the boss. He did a work breakdown structure. He drilled into the work. He found the essential tasks that needed to be done. So he created a task analysis chart, essentially. He said, of my tasks, I've got these tasks, A, B, C, D, and E. That's what I have to do, boss. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they're going to cost or how long it's going to take yet because I haven't got that far. So please leave my office. Come back in 5 minutes. I'll have a better idea. So he shooed his boss out of his office. 5 minutes later, his boss was there. Are you done yet? He said. He said, no, but I am estimating my durations. It looks like to me if we use normal tools, normal equipment, normal approach, normal procedures, it's going to take 1 week to do task A. It's probably going to take 1 week to do task B. It's going to take 1 week to do task C. It's going to take 3 weeks to do task D. It's going to take 2 weeks to do task E. Henry's boss says, oh, cool. That project is going to take... What did Henry's boss think that project was going to take in terms of time? Who's voting that Henry's boss said 3 weeks? You know Henry's boss for sure. And yet you and I know that there might be some things Henry's boss wasn't thinking. And Henry needed to communicate to Henry's boss that Henry's boss wasn't right. And he needed to be able to do it without getting canned. And you know what Henry said to himself that day, that afternoon? He said, working with the people I work with, you got to draw these boneheads a picture. So Henry started thinking, how can I draw my bonehead boss a picture so he can see what I know? Because I know this project is going to take a minimum of 4 weeks. Can you see that? Even in this little project, can you see that this project is going to take a minimum of 4 weeks? Can you see how many resource teams you're going to need for this project at this point? Even on a simple project, one team for a project, you can't tell. But if you use the critical path methodology that Henry taught us, you can. Henry said, boss, here's the deal. I got to understand my workflow. He says, I can start task A at any time. I can start A after B starts. I can start task C after B has been completed. I can start task D after A has been completed. And task E can be started and completed at any time. Therefore, Henry said, this project will take a minimum of, and Henry said, this is a pop quiz. Extra credit if you get it right. I'll give you my book if you get it right. 6 weeks. You're wrong. Sorry. It's not polite to say wrong to a client, but you're wrong. All right, I'll give you a book anyway. Is that okay? All right. 3 weeks. I hear 3. I hear 3. Do I hear 5? Do I hear 5? I hear 5 works. Come on, you guys. You told me you were schedulers. Let's look at this. Let's do what Henry did and we'll reconsider. All right? Let's glue a piece of graph paper onto our task chart. Let's start as early as possible. Everything as early as possible. Task number A, the top of the list, can be started when? Right now. As soon as we get the go-ahead. It takes 1 week. The earliest possible start. Add 1 week. It's the earliest possible finish. What's the earliest possible finish of task A? The end of week 1. Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock. Okay? What's the earliest possible time you can start task B? All right? Earliest possible start, add a week. 1 plus 1 equals? Yeah, baby. You see, that's what Microsoft Project does for you. 3rd grade drawing, 1st grade math. That's all it does. 1 plus 1 is 2. Yeah. Earliest possible start, as soon as its predecessor B has completed. Its duration, 1 week. We're out to 3 weeks. Who wants to change their answer? Earliest possible start of task D is its finish. Earliest possible start of task E, anytime. What's the total duration this project takes at a minimum? Well done. Can you prove it to your boneheaded boss with the Henry's picture? Because you have Henry Gantt to thank.
Is this your planning schedule or is this the one you're giving to your client?
It could be either. We need 2 more. And so one of the key things we need to do, I'll be right with you, one of the key things we need to do is find if there's any flexibility. Now, if this project was due out there on week 6, are you happy, mad, glad, or sad? If the project was due on week 3, are you happy, mad, glad, or sad? This is a normal schedule. I call it normal. Nobody else calls it normal. It's Ron's way of the world. Safe, simple, likely to succeed with the resources I have available without doing stupid things or taking unruly risks. Normal schedule. Now, if you've got more time, you could maybe do it even more cost effectively or less. If you want to speed things up, you may have to think through what you can do and can't do. If you have resource shortages, you may have to see where your flexibility is. And you had a question or a comment, sir? Factor 50%? Okay, now let's address that. And it's a good question. If we factor 50% into a schedule, every schedule, will we need it on every schedule? Some you'll go short, some you'll go long. If you're doing a good job, do you agree? It's like a coin toss, 50-50 more or less, right? So if you factor 50% add-on fudge factor on every schedule, what do you got? Lowered velocity, lowered profitability. The best we can do is get your variance as close as possible and fire for effect. I don't want you padding anything, but if there is some pad, I want you to know where it's at so that you can use it to your benefit. One of your teachers told you always factor in 50? That's because he doesn't have to make his own payroll on Friday. The rest of us are in a competitive environment. Does he have white hair? Well, I don't know. Maybe you should trust him. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. All right. So here's the deal. The critical path is the shortest path. It's the path that's the longest pole under the tent. So it sets the it sets the earliest possible finish, regardless of when the start time is. All right? So everything else inside that schedule is pretty much flexible as long as you don't bump yourself outside of that critical path, right? So everything else, there's flexibility on it. Do you see any flexibility on this schedule? Let's start at the bottom, work our way up. Any flexibility on E? You betcha. How much could it slip out if you wanted it to? So long as it was done on or before the critical path finish, you're good to go. Now that's called slack or float. Both are synonymous. They're both good words to use. Slack time. Repeat after me. Slack is my friend. You got options when you got slack. When you got no options, when all paths are critical, you got no options, right? So we got the earliest possible start, the latest possible start, earliest possible finish, latest possible finish on all tasks. And again, Microsoft Project does the math and the drawing for you. If you will behave and ignore all the crap you don't need in it, it can be a good program, as is Primavera, and there's multiple. I mean, there's 300 scheduling softwares out there, plus, right? And Microsoft Project is the one that I always talk about because, all right, I make 40 cents a copy on my books, okay? Call me a capitalist. All right. Do I like Microsoft Project? No. Do I use it? Yeah. Yeah. And I'll take 3 people who hate Microsoft Project afterwards and give you a copy of my book, okay? Just come on up, I'll give you a copy of my book. If you hate it like I do, because I'll try to help you hate it a little bit less. Okay? So this is a critical path schedule. And I use this thinking when I'm going through the drive-up, or I'm going to fast food. Let's say I got to be back at work at 1 o'clock. There's a long line inside. Looks like there's a long line outside. However, if I get outside in that long line, I've got no flexibility. I can't blow out. If I'm inside and I don't make my timeline, I can still blow out. I'm not trapped in traffic. So I reduce my risk. I go inside thinking like a critical path scheduler, and I go inside to stand in line, and then I blow out when I have to. So I stay flexible. This critical path thinking is just a way of life. You do it too. But slack and float is a way of communicating where your flexibility is. Critical path is a way of communicating where you don't have any flexibility. So slack is your friend. Now, a couple other key concepts that Henry helped us with. If you pull the data down, how many resources would it take to keep this project in a normal state of forwardness? A normal state of forwardness by law, literally, and by definition, okay, is making sure that you are achieving your early starts and your early finishes. That's a normal state of forwardness, literally, in the courts and in project management body of knowledge. So your normal state of forwardness, early start, early finish, early start, early finish, okay? How many resources, if it took one team per task, how many resources would you need in the week 0 to 1? Just one? Do I hear 2? Who says 3? Who says 3? Come on. You tell your boss 3. You beg for 2. And if you have to work with 1, you can do it. But the chart says 2. 1 on task A, 1 on task E. Right? Now you can negotiate. But you don't have all those tasks. You don't have all those resources week 1. What are you going to do? You're going to use your slack time, aren't you? Okay? So here's a normal set of resources for that little project. A normal set of resources. Here's a normal value created that you can bill for maybe. Okay? Here's a normal set of costs that you may have to be coming up in cash flow for. All right? Time phase data. Who does what, when, how much does it cost, how much do we earn? That's why I use Critical Path. I like making payroll on Friday. Well, let me rephrase that. I like being able to make payroll on Friday. You know what I mean, right? You know what I mean. Okay. Questions, comments? What do you think? Henry a good guy? Henry's a good guy. Here's a way of thinking about where can I speed things up. Because I started this thing off saying faster is better. Because if you're going to increase profitability, increase your velocity. The expedite analysis has been, it's been beat up by the Project Management Institute folks in that they now call it crashing. Well, I tell you what, when I tell my clients or my customers that I'm going to crash their schedule, they're not happy with me. I stick with the old word we used to use of expediting. Everybody know what expedite means, right? You speed things up, you're going to do it a different way, therefore it may cost more money. Not always, but likely will. Right? And so an expedite number is how you compress a schedule, one way of compressing a schedule. Sometimes you can do things faster, even though they cost you more money. By getting them done, you can bill for it sooner, or you can put it to work sooner, so that, there's some cost trade-offs. You can analyze those using expedite analysis. On any given task, milestone, project, or portfolio, you can ask the question, if we were to speed this thing up, what would we do? How much would it cost? So you plot, basically, what your normal cost, normal time is, and then you plot what your expedited cost and time is, and you see the delta. It is not linear. It's a step function. You can either get another piece of equipment there or just use the one you have. You can run 3 shifts a day, but you can't run 4 shifts a day with the same piece of equipment. So it's a step function. You can ship it overnight Federal Express or ground or mule train. They're all a step function. Right? And we see what the delta is. And that delta is typically called a slope, but it's such a bad name because it's not linear. And then you recast your schedule with the new slopes and costs, and you pull up Henry's little chart, in your time phase data, and you can see which is better for you. So to expedite this particular project or task, it would cost $2,000 to buy 2 days. A long time ago, I helped MCI build a bunch of mid-range transport towers across southern Wyoming down the railroad right-of-way during the winter. He needed them done before December 31st because of tax purposes. We rolled out this piece of chart paper in the floor. He came and looked at it the next day and said, I see what you guys are doing. Now, he hadn't planned on letting us bid his project, but he was in there looking for our warm fire because the road was closed over Elk Mountain. And so we grabbed him, started talking to him, and threw a log in the stove and found out he was a project manager for MCI, and he was building out point-to-point microwave towers. We said, come, sit, let's talk. He says, it looked like you guys are a plumbing shop. We build microwave towers too. This is winter in Wyoming. So we rolled out this piece of paper on the floor the next morning. We showed him a Gantt chart of how we would do his project. We were finishing up February 15th. He said to himself, these guys actually understand my work. I can see it. We communicated to him. We had competency with our Gantt chart. He said, is there any way you could speed that up? I said, there's always a way to speed things up. And you know the flip side of the equation. He says, yeah, I know. I'll come back tomorrow morning. You guys figure it out. We figured it out. We did the slope on all the projects, found out we needed to get another excavator because, so we could rent one. We had plenty of crews, et cetera, et cetera. We found out how long we could compress each of these 13 microwave sites. And we found out a way of getting them done, target date, December 15th instead of February 15th. By using expedite analysis. He signed the contract that evening. And we had work in Wyoming winter. Yes! Deal-saving project that was. And many adventures followed. Nonetheless, it was a great project. So expedite analysis. Anytime anybody asks you to speed things up or do it that is not your normal schedule, you are paying for it in cost or risk or both. Anytime and every time. A general contractor asks a sub to speed it up. Why? Well, I don't know why. You know why as much as I do. It's costing them money or time or risk, both. Now, we can expedite these projects, and one way of expediting, if you can't get any more money or any more resources, is to run things in parallel that you wouldn't normally run in parallel. So this particular task, I shipped it. And the long item up there circled, I decided to ship it fast instead of ship it slow. I knew exactly what it was going to cost me and how long it would take. On this last one, I decided, we don't have any money, so we're going to have to do things in parallel that we wouldn't want to do in parallel. And that is fast tracking. Doing things out of order or before you'd really want to do them. And basically that's how we run the construction industry now. We just run everything fast track. You know, we start building before we finish the design, before we got the okays. We start building before we got the, everything's fast-tracked anymore. Now, I ask you, while that may be an effective way of shortening the schedule on paper, what's the result? Okay, a normal schedule has a duration. What it is what it is. Normal, safe, simple. That's the way I want you to plan, always as a baseline. Always start there. Think about what your cost is, know what your risk is. Those are your baselines. Then, if you need to speed a project up, think in terms of, do I expedite or do I fast track? And of course, there's always a mix. If you expedite, you're going to reduce the duration. What's going to happen to your cost? It potentially goes up. What's going to happen to your risk? If you're not doing it normal, it's potentially going to go up a little, but it's not crazy risk, right? It's not crazy. I mean, using FedEx instead of UPS, that's, I don't know, maybe it's crazy, but you're not way out of your comfort zone. How about fast tracking? You're trying to drive down duration by not spending any more money. What happens to your risk? All right, goes off the charts, doesn't it? Unknown risk. So let me ask you this question. What's your norm in your organization? What's your normal? Do you fast track from the get-go? Or do you take the time and use the wisdom to create a normal schedule? Harvest the wisdom of your colleagues. Safe, simple. Find your timeline, cost numbers, and then defend those in negotiations. And charge more in change orders. And build the case you need to build to improve your volume, velocity, and value. So I've got a couple more minutes here, and I just want to zip by. Here's a picture. These are fast flybys. A Gantt chart, tracking Gantt. What you thought you were going to do is in gray. What you did is in blue. Are you happy, mad, glad, or sad? At that point, not too happy. But it looks like, based on what you've got planned and what your expected is, you're going to be in pretty good shape, aren't you? Yeah, a tracking Gantt is one of my favorite documents in Microsoft or on the wall with a marker. Network diagrams, you take your sticky notes, you put them on a whiteboard, and down the hallway you go. You got a start date, you got a finish date. Henry's project, A preceded B, which preceded C, which preceded the finish. After A, we could also do D. After D, we went to finish. From the start, we could do E at any time. We do the finish. Now, I got sticky notes on the wall. I'm looking at this project. I understand the workflow logic. I walk up with a magic marker in hand. I say, team, how long is it going to take us to do task A? They say a week. I say, okay. How about B? They say a week. I say, okay. And so it goes. We harvest our team's wisdom, milestone by milestone, big chunk of work by big chunk of work. We're getting a gross schedule here, a big project plan very quickly with the people who know how to do the work. We find our critical path. We know if we got any flexibility. We know the workflow. You know that project I helped Eaton schedule, that $12.5 million of medium electrical, they call medium voltage, like, I don't know, 15,000 volts. Hate to see what they call high voltage. But $12.5 million worth of stuff. Now, the prime labor provider on that project and the project manager and the project manager and I worked together, created a schedule as best we could. We ended up with durations based on parametrics, right? Math and science. We brought in the seasoned, this was his last project before he retired, got his fishing boat literally and moved to Florida. Last project, year-and-a-half project. And we asked him to double-check our numbers. We didn't give him our numbers. We went through a document like this, and we said, give us your best guess. Each one of these chunks of work. We were within 2.5% of one another's numbers. His gut instinct, his 30 years of experience, in our parametric methodology, were within 2.5%. And either way you looked at it, there wasn't any way we could do that project unless we were 2 weeks late. So we knew we had to do something. But it was amazing to see that seasoned veterans look. When you've got a seasoned vet on your team, tap their soul. They can do with their gut what you cannot do with a brand new computer and all the software in the world. Rookies, are you listening to me? Okay? Tap those old guys and gals. Okay? Make sure you get the wisdom they can help you spread. Network diagram Microsoft project looks like this. If you're going to expedite in this project, where would you spend your few expedite dollars? You see, if you spend them on task 4, the second task, you've essentially shortened the critical path on 5 other workflows. So if you go ugly early, instead of saving your war chest for a problem, if you take that war chest and go ugly early, you can shorten timeline on multiple downstream critical paths. Hence, go ugly early. I'm going to wrap down here to the last slide and get to the just the takeaways here and get you out the door here. Got any questions or copies of this stuff, by all means. This list is on your handout, planning step by step, the way I think through it. The basics you need to know about Microsoft Project are on one side. And the key concepts we talked about, cost, risk, and time are inseparable. All projects have a critical path, whether you know what it is or not. Checklists are built in. Build checklists into everything you do. Last item here, use a systematic process end to end. That's how you harvest wisdom and do it repeatably. Use checklists. Use CPM to schedule, to really learn your projects. Whether you hang it on the wall in the shop or not, learn your project before you go into it. Harvest the wisdom of collaboration. And, that's a Wyoming brook trout. Who believes that? That's my cousin, Little Harold, who used my Uncle Herbert's fly fishing technique. Finally, after 40-some years of practice, he finally landed himself a king salmon fly fishing. Simple tools, consummate skill. Thanks for coming, folks.